What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to have back on the show for a second time Raytheon, ritual abuse, MK Ultra, and secret space program survivor, whistleblower, and overcomer, targeted individual, loving mother, nature lover, former Maine journalist and reporter, published writer and author, podcaster and podcast host of her own YouTube channel, Flower Essence and Herbal Extraordinaire, remote viewer, psychic and shaman, family court reform activist, and an amazing woman risking it all to blind the darkness with her light, Jane Hatch. In case you missed Jane's first incredible episode, here's a recap of her testimony we covered last time, along with a teaser of what we will be discussing today. In the shadowed corridors of America's technology highway, where gleaming industrial parks mask deep underground horrors, Jane was forged in the fire. Born into a bloodline laced with Pleiadian DNA and Nazi collaborator shadows, her destiny ignited before she drew her first breath. Her mother, a luminous Canadian immigrant with dual birth certificates, channeled Atlantean memories, spoke to plants, and even prophesied UFOs amid the 1960s New England haze. Her father, a college graduate turned Raytheon salesman, ascended from middle-class roots to yacht club elite after it's believed he potentially signed a clandestine contract that traded Jane for wealth and power. Raised in a family of stark contrasts, Jane grew up in Hanover, Massachusetts, immersed in Christian Science teachings that proclaimed God as pure love, denying the existence of evil. Yet evil lurked. At the tender age of 4, or possibly younger, Jane's abductions began. While vans prowled the South Shore, snatching gifted children under guises like Boston Pop's field trips. Jane vanished from school, entire years erased, classmates recalling her presence for mere days. Physically hauled or drugged back, she endured Raytheon's subterranean layers beneath Needham's pristine suburbs. Amid the Cold War shadow, Raytheon, founded by German immigrants and bolstered by Operation Paperclip Nazis, evolved into a powerhouse of directed energy weapons, missiles, and mind control, with Jane and other children as unwitting pawns in their quest for global and galactic dominance. At age 16, Jane fled to Maine, but the after effects intensified. A targeted individual since youth, she endured directed energy weapons, satellites, voice-to-skull technology, gang stalking, curses, demons, poisonings, accidents, homelessness, and poverty. As a whistleblower exposing Bath Iron Works corruption, environmental pollution, faulty ship parts, and ties to nuclear arming, she was blacklisted from her journalism career. Then, corrupt family court tried her as a witch for prophetic dreams in her exposés, seizing her 3 beautiful and precious daughters, handing them to a psychopathic stepmother, likely subjecting them to the same abuses Jane fought to shield them from. Yet Jane rose like a cosmic avenger. In her incredible healing journey, Jane transformed exploitation into empowerment, using remote viewing to uncover past traumas and shamanism to depossess entities, cut cords, and restore wholeness, not just for herself, but for others. Offering long-distance healings, she guides survivors through soul retrievals, clears homes of dark energies, and teaches shamanic and Reiki lessons, helping targeted individuals, survivors, and others claim their psionic gifts from dark agendas and shine light into the abyss. And this is what we will be mainly discussing today: Jane's journey through healing and the way she has reclaimed her gifts to help others, and how she is using her gifts to expose and defeat the same evil and darkness that tried to exploit her gifts. We will hear how she combats being a targeted individual, and we will rejoice in the power of a mother's love as we hear more about her reunion with her daughters and the unshakable and unbreakable bond that they now share. And this is just a taste of today's episode. Jane is a miracle in motion, and today we get to hear how she did it. In a world shrouded by deception and division, Jane awakens the slumbering divine within us all. She shatters ancient chains, ignites yielding sovereignty, and proves beyond doubt that we are eternal beings of light, starborn, earth-allied, and utterly invincible. In the ashes of unimaginable suffering, she has risen as a burning ball of light, commanding the stars themselves and calling every soul home to their true power. Her light burns eternal, a living testament that love always triumphs, healing is possible, and the human spirit, when forged in the deepest fires, can illuminate the entire universe. Jane is not just surviving, she is thriving, inspiring, and leading the way toward a new dawn of freedom for all. The girl who knew too much has become the woman who changes everything, and she is calling you to rise with her. So, you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, survivor and whistleblower, warrioress, voice for the voiceless, passionate purveyor of truth, content creator, anti-child trafficking and survivor advocate, and walking miracle, the one, the only, Jane Hatch. Jane, it is an honor to have you back again for the second time. Thank you for being here with us today.
It's an honor to be here, Emma. I always love being with you and sharing your energy. It's so sweet and beautiful. And thank you for being here for all of us.
It's such an honor. I learned so much from all of you, and I'm so grateful that more and more people are tuning in and listening to you here, you know, and other platforms that you're on and that you're going on. And it's really exciting. You're getting invited on more interviews and your work's expanding, and just really excited to talk about your life on the other side of trauma today. I'm going to have Jane's part 1 in the show notes. I would love if you guys went and listened to that. She has an absolutely incredible testimony that we pretty much covered from childhood all the way up to around the time that she reclaimed her memories. And then, of course, we went over her work today. But today we're going to be diving more into her work, and we're going to be talking about life on the other side of remembering. And so I thought maybe we'd start there today, Jane, and recap when it was that you started to recover memories of your past, and thought maybe we could just reverse engineer your life until now and go through this journey of healing, reclaiming, and helping save the world that you're doing now.
And revealing the world too.
Yes,
you know, revealing the world that is coexisting alongside the world everyone perceives. There's a whole subculture, and so many people don't survive it that we don't hear about it, or they've been silent. So it's revealing this underworld that almost runs the world. You know, it runs the world, and it's quiet and below the surface a lot energetically until now. Until now. So when you say recovering my memories, I'm pretty sure you're referring to like the original MK Ultra torture and abduction. And it was not a linear, as you know, experience. It was getting pieces of a puzzle here and a piece there and a piece there, and also connecting dots. A lot of, survivors are it's not like suddenly a whole movie of your life, appears, like supposedly it does when you pass. It's like you get bits and pieces, and also other survivors help you ignite your memory and your recollection. And so I started to see, when I went through family court, I started to see connections between, it was happening throughout the West, and that there was a template to the whole, and I could see it was like a satanic template, what they were doing to children and how they were getting them away from loving families. So that, and then I realized it was so they could be MK Ultra. You can't have a real loving, person that you can count on. And so I started to see that my memories awakened because I started to see a pattern in family court all across the West that was systemic, and it was trauma-based mind control they were doing on the children. And then I started to see these same children being put with the abuser and taken away from the loving family. And it's reminiscent of the original Nazi concentration camps. I started to make a comparison because they use methods of extreme, and Stuart Swerdlow has examined this deeply, where they would take prisoners and they would almost freeze them to death, and then they would make them so hot that they were, they went into trauma, and they would overfeed them, then starve them, and and then they were doing that with all, so they experimented with these extremes way back in the Nazi concentration camps, I realized. And I saw this happening in family court. And then I started to see it happening through the testimony of MK Ultra survivors. They went through these, it's called opposites and extremes. And it goes back to that's where a lot of what they're using now in the West to mind control came from, is the concentration camps. And I have testimony of, Elizabeth Wallace, who oversaw some of this, that this was the origins of what they're using now all through the West to mind control, and that's just part of it. So I started to see, well, that was my childhood too. And they took my mother. I'm like, at 7 years old, they took my mother. That's when they took me from my children. So I started to see all these similar patterns. And then I started to see I was part of a program, and then I was watching other survivors of MK Ultra, and I'm like, I'm doing those same things. And there had to be some like original torture program. And then I started to remember, I was actually that's when I started to ask for memories. I started to call in my ancestors and my power animals and my star being relatives, I felt like. And they started to give me the memories of what I was used for. And then I started to realize they took psionic children. And then I went back to my original neighborhood, and the friends said, yes, the Navy would come around in white vans and pick up children. And some of them they would bring back. And some of them they wouldn't, like if you pass the test. And I'm like, well, maybe, and I also didn't remember the first 7 years of my life. And I had this idea, well, it must have been so good. That's why I don't remember it. But that's not generally the way the brain works. You don't remember things that are very traumatic. So I'm like, and then I would talk to friends and they say, do you remember this? And do you remember that? And some of them like really beautiful moments that I should have. And I started to realize I was wiped of positive memories. There was like two little, boys my age when I was 12 or 13. One of them told me, he said, do you remember the red ring I bought for you? I went to the store and I gave it to you and you said you'd wear it. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then there was like other moments and I'm like, no. And then I had like really opposite too of something that happened. So I started to say, okay, something's going on here. What happened to the first 7 years of my life? Because I have almost a blank slate. After they took my mother at 7, I had more memories, but not very many. And I don't think they stopped taking me until I was 13. So the first memory recall was given to me, and I could tell it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a journey. It wasn't thought. It was in a whole different medium. And if you're a shamanic healer, energy work, you understand. Like I even understand my dreams compared to the holographic dreams they send me. They send me synthetic because they mine my mind for the most traumatic memories and they run them. They did it less. They do it all the time. And I'm getting it isn't often attached to the same feeling as a real dream. But anyway, so I asked for the recall and I started to get them. And that was only like 3 years ago that I started to get the very origins of all the trauma of my entire life. And I'm almost 70 and I'm just getting to the very root. So I started to see that they had used me. Okay, the first thing I saw was myself around 4 or 5 years old in what was considered the traditional UFO, the little black, like in the 60s and 70s, you would see that. I saw myself in one of those, no controls. I could tell it what to do. I was using my telepathy. And I also knew my mother was and she was, 40 years old in the 60s. So it wasn't really out there that telepathy and psionic skills, but she had them all. I mean, she was talking about UFOs and she was talking about Atlantis, and she's the one that taught me about the power in plants. And so without her, I would have been, even the first 4 years with her saved my life, because she connected me to the power and healing love of the earth. But I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense, because I inherited from her, and my daughters have it, and they're trying to wipe out this bloodline as first use them. So I'm like, okay, I look like a little kid, like how, and these UFOs were dropping bombs, which made absolutely no sense, because you always think of jets or planes or something drop. So I'm like, is this some sort of video were they testing out through holograms or but anyway, that was the first image, and I questioned it at first, but it's like, what you know, and when you've experienced something. And I remember being in that vessel, and they're saying now they're believing that the Roswell crash and the UFO they were really German aircraft that were more advanced than us. There's some, threads of belief that this was not UFO, this was advanced German technology. And at that point, the US military grabbed that UFO from Roswell, New Mexico, and they brought it to Montauk. And that's when they realized that either ETs or advanced psionic children could run this technology. And that started the search and the abduction of thousands and thousands of children after Operation Paperclip, is finding psionic children that could operate technology that only ETs, or you can also say humans with star seeds, that have some sort of Pleiadian or alien or whatever you want to call it, DNA that we can telepathically, or we just normally know how to do these things, especially when you're a child and you haven't sort of eradicated it through, people telling you that's not real. You're still a child. You're still completely open. And so that was my first memory. And then I have some memories of sex trafficking, which I haven't gotten into yet. I have seen myself on the wheel, which scared me, because I've heard of other, which means I was probably trafficked to high-ranking military men, because I may have some German blood, which they really like that. And so, and I have some scattered memories of the wheel and military men being around me. Emma, I've only gotten back probably 5% of everything that happened to me, because you realize I lost like 12 years of memories. Can you imagine all? So the next thing, one of the other things I had a shaman once tell me when I was 40 years old, she goes, I see you shaking uncontrollably from cold. She said, did you ever, I go, no, because then I was, 20, 30 years ago, I had absolutely no memory of the MK Ultra underworld and my childhood. But I saw in this vision, I was being used for test as and the other children around me for testing for like what kind of suits they needed for pilots. Might they fall into the ocean? Is what what I read from this. I was put in like it looked like cast iron balls and like thrown into the ocean. And I was just like a slave, torture slave. And so and it was something to do with the Navy and the military and testing for pilots, that they were going to see what kind of material they needed, how long we could survive in these cold temperatures. So that was the next memory I brought back. So the other one was on a different planet. It was on Mars with a very famous, now deceased, sadly, James Rink recently died from a directed energy weapon attack. And sadly, he is no longer with us, but he was pretty much the leader of the disclosure movement. And I had a memory with him, and he was rescuing me from some facility. It's kind of a dramatic story. It's not that long. And I want to find out why he was rescuing me, and I want to find out where we were going and what was happening to me. They only showed me I was in a cart, like an old cart, and lying in it. And I remember just looking up, feeling motion in the wagon jiggling. And I looked up and I looked down, and it looked like, we were at top of a mountain. And I had this feeling like, well, I don't really care if we go over. I don't care. I want to die anyway. And then I looked up and someone was on a motorcycle. I realized it was James Rink, and he had rescued me from something. And we were about the same age. So he was 45 when he died. So I'm like 30 years older than him. No, something like 20. I don't know. Numbers not my forte. So he was bringing me down this mountain. And then we got out at the bottom, and it looked like a German village from Europe. But I knew I wasn't on Earth. There was a whole different vibration. And it was like a little cobblestone street with like brick or something with flowers. And this was a safe house. And I knew we were going to go in and we were going to be hiding in there. And so that was the end of that memory. I've been cloned. They cloned my altars. And I know one was a cyborg they used in warfare. I was able to bring back that soul part of myself. So I think it reached out to me at a moment of death. It was some sort of impact. And I was able to, it was because you can't necessarily retrieve the souls from your clones, but it was some warfare they were in, and there was impact, and it was about to die, or the physical being. And I was able to retrieve that piece of myself back. Mm. Yeah. I've seen other clone versions of myself as a navigator, not pilot, but navigating German ships. So they have cloned that ability in me, and they're using it now. So I wanted to know, like, how did they split my mind? Because that's how they do it. That's the basis of the whole thing. And so I was, and Raytheon plays a really big role in my life. It was an everyday pass the salt. I talked to Raytheon today, it was a big part of my life, as I recall, especially from 12 on. My father was a sales rep for Raytheon, and he got big contracts with them, and they were doing microchips, capacitors, all these things they're actually using in targeted individuals now. And I'm sure in other Raytheon products. Now Raytheon is one of the biggest weapons developers in the country. They started out like they were doing like little things like, microwave or whatever, but I think that was kind of a front. So Raytheon, very early on in my life, more like around 12, I would go to my father's office and in Needham on Great Plain Ave, and he had a very small office. He had like 3 men working for him. But they were all on the phone with Raytheon, MIT, Harvard would come up, MIT. So you could tell they were all interwoven. And I had an uncle who worked for Raytheon. In fact, when he retired, he was the lead engineer for Raytheon. And he was part of building the Minuteman missile, which at the time was, quantum leap in some sort of missile capacity, in range, I think. Whatever. So I didn't think too much of it then, but I always got a bad feeling as a child. I was like, I don't, and I thought, I just don't like my father. I don't like my father, but it was more, my stomach would, clench up. So I wanted to know, and I asked, actually, I think it was before your show, because I get motivated at certain times, to go deeper. And some of those is when I'm going to make an appearance, I may do, something to try to bring back memories. So that was one of the first times I've had horrors of dental chairs, and always had. So it's like you're saying you remember it, but you've sort of lived it your whole life anyway. And I did see myself I don't think it was Montauk, although I'm not sure, I haven't been at Montauk. But I was in a chair, and I know it was Raytheon, something to do with Raytheon, and I know it was underground. and I think it was the Needham Industrial Park. And I do remember that my mouth full of something, and I hate to say it, I think they were waterboarding me, and electrodes, and the torture got so bad. There was no rape involved in this, which a lot of survivors talk about. It could have happened before, because usually they go in stages. So I was just shown. So finally they got the altar that they wanted. A part of me left. I could see it. It could no longer stand the torture, and it left. And that's when I had one of the most profound memories. They were creating an altar to open a stargate. And so once I was out of my body, I was, away from the torture, and I could look back at them. They actually look like white coat from the 70s, 60s, those old glasses from the 70s. And I don't remember faces yet, but I look back and then I look forward, and I saw a Stargate. And it was the most interesting material. It seemed like, I'm sensing all of this. I'm reading it. I'm reading the material, psychically. And it's like a nickel, but it's like super, super strong steel, but it's grayish. And the most amazing thing about this was I was not supposed to telepathically read it. I had a relationship with the Stargate. And that's what they wanted, was it wouldn't open for anybody. It almost had to know you and love you. It's the best I can. It's like almost making me cry. And so it recognized me, and it opened. It recognized my DNA or my heart or something. They couldn't open it. I'm sure of that. It wouldn't have opened for those guys. You had to be of a certain frequency. Like maybe it knew frequency more than person. And it opened. And I went, it was like kind of like you see in the movies. I was just completely sucked through. And within seconds, I believe I was at Antarctica. And I had a mission there, but that's where it ends. So those are the beginning now of my MK Ultra Raytheon. My father did flourish after that. He moved to Needham, a very up and coming suburb. He started hobnobbing, with the yachting group, and he was just, in another world. And my mother, of course, they never let her have a good relationship with me, because I think they do this a lot to women in the program. Like they'll funnel really abusive men into your life, and you're so suffering so bad. And they send these demonic men that say they're going to save you. We're going to get your kids back. We're going to build you out. We're going to do all these things. And so she had connected with a man like that who was horrendous. So I couldn't go there without being abused by him. So her life exponentially got horrid, and he was the only one that, really prospered in any way. So that sort of makes you a little suspicious, that maybe, and I also, I asked, how did this happen? Because I was not I wasn't what they call the throwaway child or the orphan child. Like I had a family, so they had to manipulate my father, and he was easily manipulated. He was kind of a old world Yankee from Maine, very innocent. I don't know I'm not saying he was a great person, but he was kind of naive. And so I did do a remote view on this, and I saw my father's office. I saw the old, my God, it looked like ancient old wooden filing cabinets I remember as a child. They have a real distinct chunk when they close, and I heard it, and I was brought to it, and there was two men. It was a very small office in the middle of our house in Hanover. It had no windows, black desk. It was very dark, and they were there, and I saw the contract. And I saw my father sign it, and I could see they were lying. I could psychically see they were lying. They were like, she's so smart. We just want to test her for that. It was supposed to be all, because I was so gifted. And so I basically signed me away to the military. I don't know the abuse from my father. I have some idea of it, because generally, if you are in this program, you are born into it. You're born into the program, and they're going to start abusing you in the womb, and shortly thereafter. I was eventually completely surrounded by abusive family members, in the so-called aftercare, to make sure you never remember the trauma. They continue, and that becomes the targeted individual, which is, another few decades of living that, so that you will never, ever supposedly remember, but we are remembering. So it's interesting, from my last podcast with you, somebody came forward to me to talk about Raytheon and what had happened to them. Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
I've already done
validating.
Yeah, it's so, I thanked him, and he thanked me, and I did a remote view, and his father worked for companies that worked for Raytheon, and there was just so many different pieces like mine, like, oh, you're going away to a special camp for special kids, and then he would have no memory, and somehow, and then he was in a building that Raytheon started to cultivate him for some. It's really interesting, but it's so great. That's one of the great things about your podcast, as we start to connect. He was a little bit further north from Needham. He was up towards Billerica. But then I saw that my guide showed me in the remote view that like a child trafficking circle, like it in Mass, where it touched New Hampshire, and then down to Needham, and then to Rhode Island, where Massachusetts touched Rhode Island, and then where Massachusetts touched New York. So it was all these major 4 points. And he was sort of at the top of the circle, and I was sort of the South Shore. He was at the North Shore, but they both involved Raytheon. And then I saw this circle that in all those 4 spots, and they do operate on state lines a lot. So, and this is a really unexplored, these companies like Raytheon, they're very, very involved with Operation Paperclip and the Navy, the Navy. They're so intertwined. They're military at this point. And so, yes, those were a lot of the pieces I put together most recently.
Wow.
Some of it was pulling from the past, and some of it, it was all pulling from the past, basically.
Oh my goodness. So when this started happening just a few years ago, I mean, those are some pretty shocking memories to just all of a sudden retrieve when you've maybe been questioning your life, but had no idea it was this extent of sort of what you went through. How did that impact you? What was going through your mind as you were getting these memories, and what was happening in your life as a result of that?
I think it was mostly positive in a way, because I mean, when I see the torture, I'm not actually going through it again. I'm seeing it actually gave me more self-esteem, because part of the targeting individual program is to make you feel like you are nothing, nobody, no one will believe you, you're awful, you have no talents, because you don't fit into anything. And so I'm like, oh, really? Well, if I'm nothing, why did you spend millions of dollars to cultivate my talents? Like, it started to be like, oh, wait a minute. I had qualities you didn't have even. And you wouldn't have spent millions of dollars, and still to this day spending millions of dollars probably every year to suppress and to target, if I wasn't somebody very significant. So in that sense, it started to raise my self-esteem. I'm like, oh yeah, I do have these psionic skills. And I actually got more confidence in my skills. It actually put everything into perspective of why everything wasn't arbitrary. I didn't make horrible decisions on my own. It's like you were in a prison within a prison that you couldn't even see. And everything was being guided from like demonic entities to curses to remote neuromonitoring. They put millions of dollars into us to make sure, first of all, to do the trauma and then to control us for the rest of our lives. Hopefully, people are a little bit out of control. It's probably why James was killed. I mean, he was a leader in this movement. So I would say in a nutshell, my self-esteem went up. I forgave myself for a lot of decisions I made. Because if I think of somebody else in that position, it's like they couldn't have done anything different. I realized I was absolutely doing my best in every situation I was given, but the odds were so stacked against me. So it's helped me in many ways, recover my gifts, believe in my gifts, believe in myself, see myself as unique and special instead of a degenerate that they want you to, make you feel like, and a nobody, because they surround you with gang stalkers, family members who would just tear you apart, put you down, ignore you, So it's like, oh yeah, if I'm really that, a degenerate, you wouldn't have put that much money into me and effort. And to this day, you are still. So it ended up being a good thing.
That's amazing. And actually,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about your gifts in a moment. But while we're on the topic of targeted individuals, this is obviously a huge epidemic that is also invisible to society.
Yes.
Millions of people are being targeted and they're not recognized as being crime victims. People don't believe them. And they really have no way to prove their abuse because it is electronic. It's not somebody. Sometimes it can be people coming into your home. There's obviously people that can be involved, but they're able to use technology to be more discreet with the abuse. That way you can't point your finger at somebody and say it was this person. It's very mysterious who's behind the veil on this. And obviously you've been going through this for a while. You've literally been a targeted individual since birth, and you're now learning how to navigate this sort of new battlefield. You get out of your childhood abuse and the abuse never stops. It just more evolves, Yeah. And so I wanted to see, how have you combated some of this? Because I'm sure it's been, debilitating at times to be a victim of this type of abuse, especially because it's not recognized. There's not treatment centers you can go to for it. But I want to see if you had any tips or tricks or things that have worked that, other targeted individuals listening and survivors even that go through this might be able to benefit from learning.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll start from yesterday and go back a little. I just made a video because I had a pretty serious directed energy weapon attack. It was about December 2nd in Santa Fe when I was trying to leave. They will often attack when you need a plane to catch, or it's a birthday, a celebration, or you're vulnerable. I just done a channeled session. I forgot to press record on James Rink. And I was supposed to catch a plane in the morning, and I had a really serious attack. There's variations on the degree of when, how, and they use different weapons and different technology. And this was, I believe, a radiation attack, and it went through my back. I think they were aiming for my heart because it was between my scapula and my backbone, and it went through, and I could feel it come forward, and I started to shake. And I was chattering, and I'm like, oh shit, this is a bad attack. And but I have this method, and I explain it in the video on my YouTube channel. It's bringing the radiation. It comes up to me. The toxins come out through my breasts. Like, everybody has different vulnerability points, and so the first thing I do is get like really extremely, almost scalding hot on my back. And then it seems to start, I can feel it here or something. It starts to come through the radiation. And I do this Oriental technique, and I forget the name of it. It's Go Sha or something. It's like light, and they do it all over Asia and in the East, and even in America in different therapy. It's light brushing of the skin, and you keep brushing it to bring all the toxins up. And so it's a couple of days process. And I have pictures of my breast after it came. Like, it's not like it's decent. It's not like I'm showing the whole, it's like about, yeah, here up. It looks like an angry mass of red and blistered, and it looks horrible, but it's good because it's on the surface. Like, if you're not pulling this radiation out of you, it's probably becoming like a cancer or something. And so I've done that when I've had really bad attacks, and I did that, and it took a couple days, but I felt totally fine afterwards. I also take this herb called motherwort, which calms the heart. And so I did those two things. So that just happened yesterday. So that's sort of, I also have like a lead vest. Sometimes I have to use, sometimes silver. I use this silver lined sheet thing. I do use organite, like an organite pyramid. It seems to dissuade, if they're using underground weapons, it seems to disperse it. So those are like really basic things. I use shamanic healing and Reiki too, for like, I will surround myself with certain symbols if I have to go somewhere. This gets a little esoteric. I will use the Hanshazi Shonen all around me, which is ancient Chinese protection. I also call in Christ. So if I'm navigating the world, and most targeted individuals know, like, wherever you're going, they're tracking you, and they're usually following you. And it can be police, fire. I've had ambulance. They don't have the ring around, but their bumper, they've got you. So it's like, you can't call these people because they're actually targeting you. But if I'm really, really focused on, and I say, they have to have an opening into your energy field. And one thing they have on us, we feel guilty about something. So if you feel guilty, it opens your energy field to being punished. There's a meeting of those two frequencies. And I will say, I am not guilty. I am free. I am pure love. It's almost like I'm creating a different world around me that doesn't include the gang stalkers. And I can almost feel them moving into another frequency. I can't get there every single day of my life, but lots of times I am living in a different frequency where they can enter my energy field, because I've said, I am not guilty. I am free. I am love. I am that I am that I am is a very, they hate that. They hate that when you say, I am the creator. And I am the creator. I am a channel for the create. I'm not the creator. But it's not like you can say, I'm praying for myself. You say, I am the prayer. I am the light. I am the ant. And that like, it changes your frequency. It's so much harder to get in to your life. So I use a lot of that prayer and Reiki. I will also use the Reiki symbols to clear if they put, radiation in me, another Reiki symbol. It's almost like breathing now. So it's because I've been doing this for 30 years, and, I certainly couldn't use these techniques in family court. And I may not use them in some other situation because, some people, it's every targeted individual is attacked in a very personal way, because they study us for years. Phase one is they study you for years before they make a move. They know what you think. They know everything about you. And they know you better than you know yourself, because they know your past lives. They know your strengths. Then they move in very, very uniquely to each targeted individual. If they're going to set a demon in the path, they're going to make them look exactly like you want them to look. Whatever, they know the type of man you're attracted to, or woman, and so it's very unique. And so another thing is always like, mind control can only work if you're in your mind. If you go into your heart, it feels different. Like, because they will mind control you to walk off the edge of a cliff. It won't look like a cliff. It'll look like a guy who's going to offer you everything in the world, or a job, but they're directing you to your demise. And like, the devil rarely presents himself as such, is a very powerful thing to remember. The devil is going to present himself as what you desire most. And so your head, will be like, oh my God, my God. And they've done this to me so many times. I swear I would have been assassinated so many times. So if you go into your heart, and your heart's going to be, or even deeper into your soul, because your heart can be emotional. Your soul holds the wisdom. And so shamanic journeying helps with that, because it is all to do with your soul, your shaman center. And it's like, okay, that looks good, sounds good. Is it? So you have to keep in it. Unfortunately, it's the quietest voice in us is our soul. Our head is like really in our heart, the emotions. But if you can get to that really, really quiet God space, and make that the center of your life and where you make decisions from, that is another way I navigate. Now I'm older and wiser. I wasn't, believe me, I fell for it all in my 20s and 30s. Yeah, like I said, it's like breathing to me now. I do, because it's part of my life. It's the weave of my life now. It's one of it is targeting. So, what I get up, what I might wear, who you interact with is huge. They will get gang stalkers into your life if you're in any kind of compromised situation, whether it's a job or friends or any affiliates, religious. Make sure you run it through your gut instinct, because generally they're going to be trafficking you into situations that are going to be really diabolical for you. And it's going to look like heaven, because that's how the devil works. They can't entice you with something that doesn't interest you and isn't going to fulfill your dreams. So just be really careful how you navigate and check in with that someone you trust, which is hard for targeted individuals too. But mostly we do all have God within that we can access. What else do I do? I have a narrow group of people in my life that I 100% trust. I don't really step out too far from that. And people that love my children, my 3 daughters, I trust. Yeah, and that's the one where I start crying no matter what. But who else? I have a couple of friends. But they're using remote neuromonitoring on people now too, and they can remotely change people's minds about you. And if you try to get a job, the things they can do, oh my God. They were able to send my checks to some place in Florida. They can plant people at your job. I mean, I think that's one of the hardest things as targeted individuals is income. So I've decided I've got to, be out of the traditional mold, where they can't access my environment as much. So yeah, your environment, your associates, your affiliates, even if it seems like it's the greatest church in the world, if your gut is like, listen to your gut, because they can't get to that. They can get to your mind for sure, but that they still can't access the God DNA in you. Like, we are so unique. We are so amazing as humans, and they are so jealous of us, because we are co-creators with God, and they know that. So they want you to create what they want you to create through mind control instead of what God wants you to create.
Thank you for all of that. It's so helpful. There's so many people struggling with realizing that they're a targeted individual, and they don't even know where to start. They don't even understand what they're going through, or maybe that it could be related to something in the past. So I really appreciate you sort of tying all that together while also giving advice, product recommendations, and just some tips and tricks on what you do. Because, it's really important that we're helping give people all the tools possible to navigate it, because it does cause so much suffering, if people don't know what it is and how to navigate it.
It's the best of our population. It's the kindest, bravest, most creative. They're chopping the head off, the forerunners of culture that they know are going to try to change it for the better. So yeah, and they're always, I mean, I haven't met a targeted individual I didn't think was very special in some ways, and so just believe that too. You're targeted because you can't be corrupted. I know who put me on the targeted individual list, but I know I was in the military list from birth, but I pissed off people very high up in the Navy, and that's when it really got bad in my 30s. I have a tendency to really piss people off, corrupt people off, and I
love it.
I just tell the truth. I don't mean to. I wish I had another role in life. It'd be a lot easier. Wish I could just teach horseback riding lessons or something.
And here you are exposing all the evil in the world.
No, yeah, I did not sign up. I feel like, in A Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, like the little most vulnerable, most weakest little hobbit carries the ring. I feel like that because we're so innocent. We have to carry these like evil things around,
Yeah, 100%. And you've just done such a beautiful job navigating all these really difficult territories. And one of the things, like I said, that I wanted to talk to you about as well is the aspect of the realm of the spiritual gifts and the spiritual abilities. You seem to have been really in touch with, and I know we talked about your mother exhibited a lot of this as well, that you sort of grew up around this type of thing, but you were obviously used for your psionic abilities, for these different spiritual gifts while you were being exploited in these programs. In the meantime, in your front life, when you're just going about, before you had all these memories of what you were used for, were you in touch with those spiritual gifts? And did you know that you had them to some degree, like your mother? Were you using them? Or how did that impact you whenever you figured out, oh my gosh, I have all these abilities and I was used for them and I can do really incredible things? Were you already kind of in touch with that? Or was that really new for you whenever you realized that?
Well, I was in touch with them as a child, and then I went through all the front life trauma, all the sexual abuse and the abandonment and neglect, and I kind of suppressed them all, and I wanted to be part of the system, and I didn't want to have any special gifts, and I didn't want to have any special powers, and I was so traumatized I had lost touch with that. So what brought it all back was very dramatic, and it was because of family court that my daughters I was tried in West Bath, Maine by Judge Field as a witch in like 1990. They said I was prophetic. I had prophesied tidal waves, and because they could find nothing about me to take my children away for. In fact, half the town showed up to testify on my behalf, and the judge wouldn't see them. So they were determined from the beginning, the guardian ad litem, Victoria Muller, the therapist, the judge, to traffic my children away from me. And so they had to reach deep to find something someone had said somewhere. And basically that's on a report that they won't release, because I'm sure they're horrified to think that in 1990 they were trying an innocent woman as a witch. So they took my two older daughters and they trafficked them to a psychopathic stepmother, and who I believe is related to Alfred Rosenberg, Hitler's right-hand man. And she had, I don't know if I can, she had the same last name and looked like him. And she was definitely MK Ultra. She was expert on MK Ultra. So she was torturing my children and mind shattering them. And everybody in the town aligned with her, as officials. Like, And that was another thing. The more I reported the abuse, the more my children would be punished and the less I would see them. They were doing that in Maine to single women. And in fact, there's a really horrific story of a little girl, Logan, in Maine. And BBC actually did a story on her, that she was taken from her mother, who they judges said she's too young. She can't have her child. They took her child. She was only 5. And the few times they allowed Christy to see Logan, Logan was reporting abuse in her 5-year-old way. And so her mother would go to the judge, and the judge says, if you continue to report this abuse of social worker Sally Schofield, you'll never see Logan again. This is how they were operating in Maine, the judges. They were getting these kids to trap. And sure enough, Christy did not see Logan again. She was killed by Sally Schofield, the foster parent who was trafficking Logan. And so I was getting the same treatment. If you keep reporting this, you're not going to see your kids. And it was true. And they would also punish my daughters if they tried to reach out. They were desperate. They were trapped in a house. And so the more I tried to help them, the more they would be punished. And the therapist, the guardian, the judge, they were all working together. These were beautiful girl, intelligent, gifted, bloodline. They were going to use them. And, one of them was in the gifted and talented. So the more I fought it's like a noose. And the more you fight the noose, it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. And so I had, it's just, I got to go through this because this is like, I had no resources to save my daughters. And the more I tried to save them, the worse the abuse got of them. Sexual abuse, mind control, brainwashing, opposites, not eating right, not being like, they were breaking them down to be trafficked, I'm sure. And so I had no way. And I couldn't kill myself because I knew they would not survive, because I was the only one that was aware of what was happening. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. And my daughter, one of them, snuck a call and said, Mommy, I think she's going to kill me. And I knew that was true. I knew that was what was one, because that was the one daughter that would not turn against me. And it was driving them insane, her handlers. And so I think they were. And I'm like, I've got to do something. They're going to die. She's going to kill them, or they're going to fall between the cracks, and they're going to be taken away on an airplane to Epstein Island or something. And then I had, after she called me, I had this dream that this horrible house they were living in with their stepmother burned to the ground. I'm like, that's a sign something is going to happen. So I had been learning about shamanism. I was alive at that point because of shamans in Maine. They had, my soul had been shattered. I had so many soul parts across the world, because every time the court did something, I had another soul loss. And that's the point. It's they're getting you to further and further disassociate. So there's nothing left inside of you. And then they can get control. They don't like anybody standing between them and be able to traffic these children. And I was the only one standing. Nobody else could figure out what was going on. And so I can't remember where I was. So I had that dream. Oh yeah, I was saying shamans in Maine had returned soul pieces of me. So I was getting stronger. I was homeless. I had no money. I'd been blackballed because I had been reporting against nuclear power. I've been reporting against the shipyard and all this stuff. And I had nothing, just nothing. And I didn't have I was just nothing almost. And so I'm like, except for I was a Lakota Sioux medicine man in another life. So I had this recall. I think that was the only thing, like, I just knew. And from my mother, like, I was always like, oh my God, there's got to be something, God, there's got to be something I can do to save these children. And so I started to study shamanism, and I was saved. And so I finally, I was waiting for this moment where I was going to be perfect, but it's like, no, they're going to be killed, and I've got to do something. And this is all I have. And they won't be able to tell I'm helping them because it's in the spirit world. They couldn't report to the judge that, oh, her mother's reporting abuse. So I'm like, okay, I can go in spirit. So it was one of these nights that was just electric. And I'm like, I am calling. It was like Lord of the Rings. I called on all the spirits of the trees. I called on the spirits of the flowers. I called on the spirits of the mountains nearby me. I'm getting goosebumps. I called on all my ancestors from all lives, Aboriginal warriors, Native American warriors. I called on my ancestors, my daughter's ancestors. I called on my power animals. I called on my angels. And I had been studying with this shaman, Lynn Andrews, and she appeared in a dream with a lightning bolt. And I'm like, this is it. I've got to go. So shamans generally journey through the spirit world on like a power animal or something. So my spirit got on this white horse, and all of these beings were beside me that I called. I could see them all. And I'm like, I'm going, we're saving my children. I'm going, we're going, I'm saving. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going. And they were all there. And I just felt this incredible power around me. So we journeyed through the spirit world, and the cover of my book is that journey. It's a white horse, and I'm in the Pleiades is in the background, and it's a night sky in Maine, and I'm riding over these rivers. I'm going to this horrid house where they are. So we all descend on this house where my daughters are. And the Native Americans and the Aboriginals and the all the answers, they start pulling demons out of the house. They're just taking all these entities off of my daughters, because MK Ultra, and I could also see MK Ultra forming in one of my daughter's minds, and I pulled it out. And we were just like, the house was full with demonic energies and like attachments to the stepmother. So all of these beings were like clearing the energy field, like my daughter's energy field. And I reached out my hand to my daughter, and she reached back. They still had that much trust. And I took her soul and I put her with me on the horse. And then I reached out to my other daughter, and she took my hand, and I brought her back on the horse with me. And the spirits that were left, they were like warriors. They were like breaking down. The house was boarded up. My ex-husband and the psycho stepmother were in Disney World and they'd left them alone. I mean, they were like 13, 14, and they had boarded up doors. It was just, and so we left, and I left with my daughters in the spirit world with their spirits, right? So I fly back through the spirit, and this is common terminology to shamans. A lot of people might not be, but it's called a shamanic state of consciousness. So, and then you would ask me, how did I develop these skills? It was out of sheer, it's do or die. I've got to reclaim my spiritual power. So we got back to my place in Damariscotta, which was up the river, and I just was completely conked out. And the next day, I just felt at peace for the first time in years, absolute years, since the family court had started. And then I got a phone call that night, and it was a neighbor. Like, very few people dared to speak out about the stepmother because she'd destroy anybody, because she was a psychopath. And said, Jane, you should get over to the house. There's something going on over there. This is in real life. So I got in my car. I'm like, oh my God, like, is this gonna, like, usually it was something horrible. So I got there, and there was like, my daughters were there, and they had like had this huge party, and all these kids, they were inside the house, and there was a police car there. And this doesn't sound good, but it is like, so the kids were breaking down the walls, smashing windows. They had taken down the borders, my ex-husband, and they were shaking the police car, and they're saying, set the children free, set the children free. And all these kids were running out. My daughters ran out. One of them, I sat in the back of a police car with. She was only like 14. They're like, who are you? I'm like, her mother. And so what happened after that moment is they literally broke free from the stepmother. They never, ever went back to this house. So what essentially happened is, they say as above, so below. What happens on the spirit level will, if it's powerful enough, will happen on the physical. So what we did on the spiritual level actually manifested the next day in a different way. It was kids. They were breaking down doors and everybody ran. My daughters ran. They came to me. My lawyer went to court. The next day, full custody was returned to me within a week of that shamanic journey. So I'm getting goosebumps now. So it was the end of their physical imprisonment. Believe me, it was decades, and we're still healing from the MK Ultra mind control and the trauma of not being together for all those years. But and my husband, ex-husband, and his wife came back, and they had lost control completely. They wanted to put my daughters in a detention center. They were trying to do everything to get them back in control. And then they tried to get the police to say they could never come back to this town. And anyway, it went on and on, but basically they were set free and a new level of healing began. Now, I honestly think my younger daughter would have been killed by the stepmother because they could not get her to stop loving me and trusting me. And it was driving, because in MK Ultra, like if you don't fall into line, you're just chopped liver, if you can't be used as an asset. So that skill, and what was really happening there was depossession. These are all shamanic terms, spirit intrusion, removal, soul retrieval, house clearing. And I did it with my own guides, but I also had the support of the universe. And so I continue to do that. I do that for other people. I wish all women, if I could say anything, do not go to court. It's Freemason. It's satanic. Like use magic if you have to. Put up with do not go to court. Court is brutal right now, especially if you have children that would be valuable, and they could be just valuable for sex trafficking. I know you've talked to survivors of family court, Emma, and they're mostly taking kids from loving mothers, especially if you report abuse. And I started to report abuse, that the stepmother was abusing my children. And I had one psychotherapist who was not part of them. And she wrote like a 20-page report to the judge and said, do not let these girls alone with this woman, even. Never mind custody, shared custody. And he completely ignored it. So they knew going in exactly what they were doing. But, my poor little Logan did not survive, and other children in Maine. I think we're alive because of spiritual intervention. And so I've continued to develop all those shamanic skills that were very natural to me as a child because of my mother. I just suppressed them because of the trauma, but I had reached a point where I'm going to die. My daughters are going to die. And this is the only resource I have. It was like becoming bionic in that sense, like you develop something out of life or death. People that will pick up. It's like I developed these skills. And I think that we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for and then from then on, they asked for soul retrieval. So I started doing soul retrieval for them and other people. And, whenever they were in a situation, they asked for a clearing. So they trusted the process, and it kept this. And one of my daughters is a healer now. Two of them are working as healers.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah. And so it's been hell, absolute hell. And it did not end that day, believe me, but they never had to go back to that house ever.
That is so powerful. That makes my hair stand up on end too. And like I said in the intro, just what a joy that we get to rejoice at a reunion happening at all. So many times this just doesn't happen for parents, and it's so devastatingly sad. And there's no excuse for the time that you did lose out on with your daughters. That should have never happened. However, I'm just so grateful that they get to be with you now, and they get to know your love as adults and get to grow with you and, do all this special stuff, become healers, just like you became. That's really beautiful that you all have just this really deep bond from the work that you were doing in the spirit while you weren't with them, and that they could never shake the love that they knew and felt from you before
No,
they were taken away. That was always with them.
that's why I also believe love is the strongest force in the world, because they had
Yes.
6-7 years with me and it overcame all the MK Ultra, all the torture, all the mind control, all the abandonment. They remembered that love, and it was more powerful than anything else. And that's why I know we can heal this planet with love. I know survivors can heal. And it's love. Love is so powerful. We just don't forget it, even if you just get a little taste of it.
Yes.
And they just, one of them is writing a song about me, and she wrote it and she's recording it. And I always showed her, I always brought her I brought her in the midst of everything to my wildflower gardens. And it's just, it's absolutely incredible that we maintain those bonds, because it doesn't happen in MK Ultra. They destroy the mother's reputation.
And then they destroy the whole family, in general. It's so destructive.
It's the relationship, the family, the culture. If you don't respect the maternal ties, and the family culture is going to fade. And that's what they want. They want to destroy our culture. And what other way to begin than with the mothers, the core of the families. Yes. And that's what they're doing. All through the West now. And I think it's MK Ultra, that they learned in the concentration camps. And this was long ago planned, and I think that's what was the purpose of the concentration camps, was perfecting mind control. They tried to make it like it was certain, just the Jews. It wasn't, according to testimony after testimony, that it was children. And a lot of it was psionic children. But of course, they rewound it, and that you never can talk about it, the Holocaust, because they don't really want you to know the truth, I believe.
Right.
So, and now they're implementing it. But I still think there's hope if we really understand that love is the most powerful force. Like Mary Baker Eddy told me when I was a child, Christian Science was crazy in so many ways, but I held on to that a lot, that God is love and I am love. And in my worst moments, I would just hang on to that. Even though everything in the world was reflecting the opposite.
And I love too how you were inspired to further develop your gifts and to tap into them through the power of love, that you loved your daughters so much and wanted them back so much that it brought out these gifts that had been not necessarily dormant, but that you maybe hadn't honed in until then too.
Yeah.
And so I love that even the reemergence of you reclaiming your gifts and being inspired to sort of take your power back with them, it was from a source of love versus how it was used in the past, which was sort of the opposite, exploitation and these very negative energies were trying to siphon your psionic gifts and just your gifts and your intelligence, where now you get to use them how you want in the ways that can benefit you in your life.
Yeah. Yes. And to undermine their efforts.
Yes. 100%.
And you asked me another thing about how, I was with my mother, I was really early, and she had these nature, connection with nature, and just loved it. Well, another thing that happened was they brainwashed me into believing my mother was bad. That's what they do. You didn't want to talk about her. She had the scarlet letter. And so I developed this thing where I was not going to be like my mother, so that I would not lose my children, because that's what they associated in my mind. And so that's a lot of the reason I left my connection. I was going to be like the good guys, the suits, the yacht club type. I was going to be with them and I was going to be safe. Well, the opposite was true. The more I got away from my true self, the more dangerous it became. So finally I realized, I started thinking, don't want to be like my mother, because she started to visit me again. I'm like, she's not like that. It was all a lie. It was all part of the program, because not do they just take mothers, but then they brainwash the children that the mother's bad. That is a very systematic part of MK Ultra. And so I was part of that MK Ultra until I started to wake up. And so it was also reclaiming my mother. in my life and her gifts, because I did everything she didn't do, and I still lost my children because it was a mirage. It wasn't my mother. It was a MK Ultra. But that's another thing they do. Anything bad that happens, it's your mother. That's a big part of the system, or whoever is the loving family member. And I hate to say, exclude men, but for early childhood, it's often the mother. And so eliminating that tie physically, mentally, spiritually is really innate in MK Ultra, because they want children to feel hopeless and abandoned. And I did, till I started to get to know her again and, reacquainted with her gifts. And so that's another reason I turned against my skills, was because it was like my mother. We didn't want to be like my mother.
Right. Oh my gosh. Your story is really inspiring on so many levels. Like, seeing what you went through to how you overcame it, and then the wisdom that you've taken from it, and even the wisdom that was inspired by your healing, that you had a lot of ancestral bonds, sort of these generations all sort of came together right in these moments where you were in despair with your own children, and sort of blossomed this fire inside of you that not only got your children back and reignited that bond with them, but also helped you heal that mother wound that you had from the generations prior, so that's really interesting how these different events like created generations of healing almost.
Yes. That's true. Yeah.
And so at what point did you decide, oh my gosh, like I'm going to make this my career. I'm going to start helping people. I'm going to do remote viewing. And if you want to talk a little bit about the remote viewing too, I know that that's something a lot of these children are typically used for, and or have an innate ability to have a strength for, ever since they were a child. And a lot of, we talked about Rebecca Barron right before we came on here. She's another one who's really harnessed that once again as an adult. So I'd love to hear kind of your experience with remote viewing. I think, it's a really fascinating gift that's sort of at the disposal of everybody. They say anybody can remote view. And it's really interesting how some people like you really excel at it. And it's just a really interesting gift that, exists in the world that we can have. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and sort of how you decided to merge this into, to make your passion your career path.
Well, I was good at it, for one thing, and not everybody, everybody can do it, but not everybody does it.
Right. And not everybody's good at it too.
They can do it.
Yeah.
And I also, I've been doing it all my life. I just didn't know what it was. Like,
really?
And it's like, I would see the future, and I would, and I didn't even call it remote view. It was just like, I would ask to see something and I would be shown it. And I just thought it was like my head or something. And then I started really, no, these things are coming true. And remote view is one of the easiest things and most pleasurable things for me to do, because I'm basically just sitting there watching a movie, whereas shamanic healing can be very intense and very labor intensive if you're doing a depossession. If someone's possessed, or if you're doing a soul retrieval, you have to journey through the web of life, and you have to find the soul piece, and you have to negotiate with the soul piece, and sometimes you have to deal with other entities. So it's work on the spiritual. Like, remote view is like you're just sort of sitting there and you're shown all this stuff. And I'm very visual. I love visuals. I even write screenplays. I like visuals. So it was just natural, and people enjoy it and they ask for it. And, I've done a lot. I did one on who really killed Virginia Giuffre. I've done one, the one that got the most views was The Truth About Erica Kirk.
And this is all on your YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the Virginia Giuffre one was pretty intense. And I predicted a lot about Trump, and it's just it's the easiest method of spiritual interaction.
And here's Jane's YouTube if you guys want to go check those out, and I'd encourage you guys to. It's right
Yeah,
at his YouTube.
that one right there, that top one that's how I talk about the recent directed energy attack and how I healed it. And I show pictures too of
Oh wow.
of the damage and how you kind of process it out of your body. Yeah, the remote views are a little bit further back, I guess, but when will the targeted individual? Oh, Virginia Go Free. Yeah, that wasn't the most intense one I've ever done. Okay, that there is Elizabeth Wallace and I, who I was talking about earlier. One of my
okay.
That's Elizabeth Wallace right there. Can you see that?
Amazing.
Yeah. That's, oh my God. I what time is it? That is such a huge story. Yeah.
Yes, I'm excited to, if you want to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing. I know that it's still sort of in the developmental stages, but if you want to give any teasers for people to look forward to what's coming, that would be awesome.
Yes. Okay. So this is huge. This is absolutely huge. I have always felt a connection to Princess Diana. I mean, everybody loves Diana. I felt that too, but I felt drawn to tell her story. I was supposed to tell this story about her life. And I'm like, what is it? Like, who killed you? What? I'm like, what? So anyway, I went to England like 5 years ago, and with Diana, who I named my daughter after Princess Diana. She's my youngest daughter. I named her after the princess. And she went with me. Yeah. And so I toured England. It was incredible. I couldn't even begin to explain all the metaphysical things. And the time I talked to her brother, and I was in the church, Spencer Church, and I talked to all these people in England about what happened to Diana. What do you think? And so it was both like a journalistic, because I'm a journalist, I'm a trained journalist, I have a degree. And so I'm always the journalist, but I'm also, shamanic and psychic. So I was drawing from all my skills. And so I still felt like I was not getting to the root of what Diana wanted me to tell through her. So when I got back to the States, and several years later, I would scan like videos looking for people who mentioned Princess Diana. And I came across this woman, Elizabeth Wallace. And that was probably the most extraordinary meeting of my life. And her story is absolutely incredible. And she lives in the Netherlands. She was friends with Princess Diana, and she is a bloodline daughter of Queen Elizabeth II. She was in the Hitler projects where Mengele and Hitler were doing these test tube baby experiments and combining different sperm with different eggs. And she was created from the egg of Elizabeth. I'm not going to say the father right now. That's something we're going to hold back. It's quite extraordinary. But she was created. She was carried by a real woman. They transferred the embryo to and that's a very famous member of the royal family, which I'm not going to mention either. And she was carried by this person, and she was born, but she was born into the program with Queen Elizabeth as her handler and with Hitler and Mengele as her programmers. She went through the most severe MK Ultra mind control I have ever heard of my life. And Hitler was one of her programmers, but she said he was nothing compared to Mengele. Mengele was pure evil, where she said Hitler was under MK Ultra mind control himself and being drugged. So this is why this book rewrites history. And I didn't mean it. Like I'm just like wanted to figure out. So she also, I'm not going to reveal entirely her relationship or how she knew Princess Diana, because it's going to be shocking, absolutely shocking, what they were doing to Princess Diana, the royal family. And I don't just mean, telling stories to BBC or, making fun of her for this or that, or what happened with Camilla. and Charles, and that was torturous, but there was something else going on behind the scenes. The same thing that was happening to Diana was happening to Elizabeth Wallace, and that's how they met. They would meet at World Economic Forum. They met several times at Princess Diana's house in Kensington, and that's why my most recent Substack is The Last Secret Conversations with Princess Diana were shared with Elizabeth Wallace. And she told me about some of the last time she had with Diana and what she told her. But she knew her since she was like 13 on, because they were in this similar program, which the book reveals. And so this is huge. It's called Royal Blood, Royal Blackmail. It's about the origins of MK Ultra mind control. It's my story woven in with Elizabeth Wallace. I've used a lot of testimony from your people, Emma, like Nathan Reynolds and all the people I've seen on here. They all collaborate. When people read this book, they're not going to walk away and saying that program doesn't exist, and exists from the very top down. And by top, I mean they are using the elite. Like her blood was so valuable in the sex trafficking world that she was sex trafficked to the highest level military politicians. She was trafficked to every US president from Carter up. And I'm sure she was the goose that kept laying golden eggs, because she was royal blood and they want to absorb her energy. It's like we have this energy if we have like these certain qualities. So it's 600 pages. I've got to cut it down. She has hundreds and hundreds of images. She has a drawing she did when she was on in the garden at Buckingham Palace with Margaret Thatcher and Queen Elizabeth. And she's a little girl sitting in the grass. She's 12. And the little bubble above Margaret Thatcher's head says, "What are we going to do with her next, Elizabeth?" So they were talking, and Rebecca Barron said the same thing. The Queen said, "Who are we going to traffic to her next?" So they sit and that's what they were deciding, who she was going to go to next. And Rebecca reported the same thing. Queen Elizabeth was her handler. And Chantal Fry, they're high level monarch sex trafficking slaves. And so the stories I have from Elizabeth are mind blowing, about the Queen, about Philip, about Charles, about the hunting games, about World Economic Forum, the underground tunnels in the United States, Hitler's home in South America, where she went after he supposedly died. He didn't. She was brought. This story is so big, it's hard to. I'm going to put an end to it there. I think that's enough for people to. But if you're people that watch this show, you know that the elite use their children a lot in these sex it's a pay to play. So they literally will create embryos that are going to be used. And just because you're elite, you don't get away with not being in this programs. In fact, if you're elite or aristocracy, like Princess Diana was the Spencers aristocracy, they had to pay to play. Elizabeth Wallace said Diana was born and bred to be sacrificed. So I go into that. I hope it's a happy ending. The whole point is to try to free these children of this day that are still being, abducted and trafficked and used. And I talked to another man, Declan Howard. He was also born and bred from Elizabeth's line, and I have his testimony. So, if they let me, I shouldn't say that, but yeah, I hope. We need a publisher. We need somebody that dares to tell the story. And, it has information never before shared about Diana, so it has financial potential, to make a lot of money, but also, we're revealing a lot, especially, the people in England do not want to hear, but it's nothing new. It's nothing new. Kevin Annett knows, it's all out there. You interviewed Kevin. I include a lot of his information about the Camelot children, and this guy, Declan Howard, said he saw them. He saw the Camelot children under one of the cathedrals in the tunnels, and he saw them being sacrificed. So, or he thought it might be them, but he said they were in too good a condition, which means they were recently abducted. But he was seen native children and been forced to participate when he was 4 years old. So they are. And Kevin said that one of Charles's Secret Service people came forward recently. I don't know if you remember that part. Was that your interview? I think it might have been. Came forward and said, yes, he had seen the Kamloops Native American children with the royals, and he saw them sacrificed. So what I'm putting out there, most of it, it's out there. Some of it isn't. The pieces about Princess Diana are not out there. But anyway, that's what I'm working on now, trying to get it done and published. If anyone,
do you have any idea on a timeline on when that might be out in the public, or is it sort of up in the air right now? I'm sure it's a massive undertaking getting all this information
It's
together.
massive, because I had started the book before I met Elizabeth, and so I had to like rework the whole book.
Oh wow!
Her is sort of the central theme, revealing. I mean, it's basically done. I'm just like still like it's like a piece of because I'm telling a story too. I want it to be not didactic. You know, it's not a lecture. It's a story of people's lives, and of Diana, of Elizabeth, of me, and all the other survivors. So it's done. I mean, I you know.
You mentioned that you could possibly use some help. If there's somebody listening who's like, oh, I have those skills, I can contribute. Yeah. How can they get a hold of you that way?
My email is pretty good. It doesn't seem to be hacked. The Love New Earth at Tutanota. Okay. You have to put it under because it's a weird spelling, especially publishers. And it's tricky because, you know, a big publisher in England is not going to touch that, but there's got to be somebody in the States or somewhere that will pick it up, and it could be a bestseller because of Diana, I think. The interest in Diana. And it's like I'm pulling them in with Diana, and then I'm like, they're going to get the real McCoy. You're going to hear what's really going on. So who's going to read? You know, it's like she's such a beautiful, loving figure that everybody loves. They're going to pick it up, but then they're going to go, whoa. Like this.
Pick it up for Diana, get slapped with mind control.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Congratulations. You know, I know that this is still something that is being worked on currently, but man, what a great thing to have almost all done that you're going to be able to give to the public. And that has to feel so good to all have all of that research down on paper and sort of in a digestible way.
Yes. That's my skill as a storyteller, to draw people in. So I'm not lecturing about very serious subjects. It's still like got levity and joy in it.
Yeah. Gosh, you are so dynamic. I just love, you know, learning all the different things that you've done with your life, you know, and the ways that you've harnessed your gifts for good, your talents, and then also things that you're passionate about, like writing, you know, how you're able to incorporate that. There's people that have never had, you know, a lot of trauma in their whole life who have creating a book on their bucket list and never do it. And here you have the weight of the world on your shoulders and you're doing all these really amazing things. And so your websites, you have multiple websites, you're on multiple social media sites. Do you want to share a little bit about your websites and where people can find you and your work and any upcoming seminars, or, you know, if you're taking clients, where they can connect with you? Love to promote what you're doing.
Yeah. My daughter just made me a website, radiantearthmother.com. And that's where you can sign up for a healing. You press, it's like Reiki, remote viewing, animal communication. And then you pick one and you end up just sending a text to me. You don't get billed. That's it. Yeah. Can you scroll down a little? Because she made this and I have to keep.
Sure. Yes.
The one in LA. So there's Reiki, shamanic healing, tarot crystal and power animal, and then there's remote viewing. And so they have different prices. They're not much compared to other people. They're
totally.
But if you press book, I think it's just going to bring you to my a text to me where you can ask me a question about it. You're not going to be like billed immediately. We're going to have a little bit of a dialogue and a consultation. So to book, that's the best place. If you have trouble with my website, they're cyber hacked a lot in the past. Just email me through Love No Earth at tutanota.com. Yeah, my youngest daughter, Diana, took that picture of me at a library. We were doing a writer's group together, and it's such a cool picture with that stained glass window.
It's beautiful.
And then there's the testimonials. I don't have any workshops right now. I want to get this book out. The other website, janeceliahatch.com, is sort of all about myself, my training as a shaman. And I did a master's thesis on shamanism. And so I have quite a literary review of the history of shamanism and that's available. Yeah, I think it's that link. So this is mostly about shamanism, and it's not tended to as much, but I don't want to get rid of it because it's just got so much information. But it's not, I don't do that. That's that's it right there. That is 90 pages if you want to learn about shamanism, the history of shamanism, and all of my teachers. And I'm trying to start TikTok, which I'm really excited about because it's going to be like love is all around you. So it's the balance, the counterbalance to MK Ultra's all around you. My other from Facebook, MK Ultra, love is all around you, and MK Ultra is all around you. But this is the light side, and I just have to figure out how to do the videos. But I think this is going to be fun for me because I'll get to point out all the beautiful things in the world that help me survive. And then I have Facebook and YouTube. Please subscribe to YouTube. They have kept me. That's my Facebook. You're so fast, Emma. See that white horse? That is the journey I was talking about. That's it. That white horse. Yeah, that's it. That's my book. So it only can be ordered through me. And it's about family court and that. So that's returning after the rescue. And I've got my eagle and the Pleiades and the crystals and all the things that give me power and the trees and my two little girls, an image of them returning home to mom, at least their souls. And that was the beginning.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. I love that graphic and I love all the thought that went behind it.
Yeah, a really good friend of mine did that.
And that's, people can email you if they're like, oh my gosh, I really want that. That's the best way to get it from you directly is through email.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because Trine is not covering it anymore. Trine Day Press. In fact, I gotta buy my books back from them. I really need to do that. It wasn't marketed very well. I think it needs to be repackaged and remarketed because it's an incredible story. When people read it, they say it's gripping. They can't put it down. But it didn't get marketed very well, but it's an incredible story. And that's sort of the peak moment it's that shamanic journey in many ways.
It's neat to see the visual after you told us this story.
Yeah.
And now we get to sort of see how you were, how it literally looked to you. We get to get the visual to it.
Yes. Yes. And me looking 30 and young and beautiful again.
You're still so beautiful. What are you talking about? My goodness, you're stunning. Oh, and I noticed too, on your, you're also on Twitter.
Yeah,
I see that you have
zero coverage. I don't think I've ever gotten a like. For 5-10 years, it's completely shadow banned, so I barely use it.
Well, not anymore. I'm liking and sharing right now.
Okay, there's one like that. Oh, see, that's you. Okay, yep. There I go. My big moment on Twitter. And
all of your handles are pretty much the same.
They are. Everything is Jane Celia Hatch. Please subscribe to my YouTube. Like I've been at 250 for 7 years subscribers. It's almost up to 500. I only need 5 more to get to 500, guys, please. And then I don't know how you get financial. Probably people like me don't. Do you, Emma? Do you ever? Does any of this?
YouTube's so volatile. It's very difficult if you're talking about this stuff to get financial.
And that's not my goal. But
no, it might not be, but you deserve it. It takes a lot of energy, money, effort, and time to put even one video up. Like, you need to make money off of this so you can keep doing it. It makes me really mad when people are like, oh, somebody's trying to make money off their story or make money off trauma. And it's like, of course they should be. Like, for one, look what they went through and they never got compensated for it. And for two, what, we want them to go get normal jobs and then try to squeeze time in late at night to do advocacy work and to educate? Like, I want you and others to be able to do this full time. We should absolutely be wanting you to be able to make money and finances so you can keep doing this. We need healers. We need people to be there for all the survivors waking up, for all the advocates who want to help, for all the therapists trying to learn what you went through. We need you. And so we need you to have resources and finances and to be able to do this. So you should absolutely be making money off of it.
Yeah, if anyone wants to donate, they can do it through Zelle at my phone number, and you can put that on the below, because I don't have Stripe yet. But you can put it below, at least so I can buy back my books. I'm really kind of upset about I can't buy back. Like, I think there's 100 or 200 sitting in there, and I want to buy them all back. But anyway, yes, I think you got to have 500 subscribers and like certain number of hours watched, and you can be financed. But then again, I don't want weird ads on my videos, so I don't know what's next. But I would love to get more subscribers for many reasons.
I'm going to have all of this in the show notes. If you guys can please go subscribe to Jane's channel, that would be amazing on YouTube. I know most of you are on YouTube. She also has a Rumble too. That's also really helpful if you guys prefer that channel. It's exactly the same name, just on Rumble. I'll have that below too. But I know most of you are on YouTube, so please go support her. Help her get to her goals of trying to be monetized on that platform, because that would be amazing.
Yeah, it would. It would be so amazing. I can't even.
And of course, if you guys are interested in getting any of her services, you guys can do that as well through her websites.
Yes.
You guys can connect with her there. That's another way that you can help fund her and use her beautiful gifts that she just spent this whole episode talking about how she developed. So, and I'm gonna share her other website as well. Radiant.
Yeah, that's the one where you can actually sign up for healing work. And again, if you have problems, just email me or text me.
And I know some of you don't celebrate holidays, and I totally understand why. A lot of you still do, and you're looking for alternative ways to give gifts, and you might have survivor friends or advocates or people that you know now in your circle that are interested in stuff and providing services, buying books. This can be a really great way too for you guys to gift people that you love in your life, or advocates that you have, or therapists or survivors. Giving services that survivors are providing to another survivor, a therapist, or a friend is also a really wonderful way that you guys can help support our community. And Jane obviously has lots of different options for you guys. So if that's something else that you guys are looking for, ways that you can support survivors during the holidays and gift friends, go purchase a service and give it as a gift, and email Jane and let her know. Be amazing if you guys could do that. And of course, her YouTube, that would be wonderful if you guys could help share her videos and subscribe to her and uplift her. Go like her stuff on Twitter and on TikTok. Go follow her journey on Facebook. Man, it's amazing, all these platforms that you're on. I don't know where you're finding time to sleep during all of this. It's hard keeping up with all of it. It's a chore.
It is. But like Twitter, like I haven't had a like in 5 years, so that's pretty easy to manage. Now I have one from you. I don't know. Facebook is kind of natural. I like YouTube. I don't put out I guess I'm getting out a video a week, and but getting the book, it is. I especially like if you have a platform as big as yours, I like Emma. How do you do it and you do work full time? Speaking of,
I
You're
struggle with
amazing.
it. It's a struggle for me, and I mean that in the best way. I'm so grateful to get to do it,
Yeah.
but we do this from the bottom of our hearts and,
Uh,
for a reason bigger than us, and it's worth it, and if we can get videos out and content and, just give people the information, then the comments they're kind of the icing on the cake. And, it's wonderful to get the support from people.
Emma, 2 decades ago, 3, you were someone I couldn't even have dreamed could have existed. Someone like you, I couldn't even dream of it. Someone so accepting of us, it just brings me to tears. So thank you. You're
I'm
a
so
dream.
sorry.
You're a dream come true.
It's wonderful to hear, but it's so sad, just the neglect survivors have gotten.
It is.
It
is. It is. Yeah, it is. To have
and I'm grateful that hopefully that period's over, and from now on it's just going to be more growth with support for survivors, and more and more growth with your content being recognized and featured different platforms and in all different ways, different books and services. So just thank you for not giving up despite not having all the belief and the support from all the people around you, and just the ups and downs that you've gone through in your life. It's amazing that you're here today with us, and that you're still in a position to speak out, and that you can do it with such strength and grace and love while helping other people. Just thank you for everything. I have the easy job, just getting to listen and share. I'm just amazed by what you and others have overcome and continue to do. So thank you for all your work, Jane. The little girl that you once were that you talk about is just, she beams for you. She's so proud of you.
Yeah, I can feel that.
And so for today, was there anything else that you wanted to share?
I shared a lot.
You did.
I can't think of anything right now.
Well, I would love to have you back on again sometime when we do some things, and especially when this new book comes out and these new projects. But I'm really grateful that you spent this time with us today. What you have to share is so valuable, and
thank you, Emma.
Just incredible what you've accomplished. And like I was saying to everybody, I'm going to have all of Jane's information, including her Zelle, I should say, her donation through Zelle. You guys can reach her that way through her phone number. I'll have her email. That way you guys can reach out to her directly. If you want to offer encouragement, connect with her, share information, and or purchase her book, that's the best way to get in touch with her. But please go support her on YouTube and TikTok and X and Facebook and all these other places that she's at. And please go visit her websites and just lift her up. It would mean the absolute world to me. And so you guys, thank you so much for listening. Bless you all. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Emma.